1975, Devon, England, a quiet, peaceful farm hides a chilling secret. Beneath the seemingly tranquil landscape lies a timeline of catastrophic events that would later become known as the worst man-made ecological disaster in British history. On what started out as an ordinary day, gas cylinders began to inexplicably explode at a farm near the village of Westchapel, triggering a horrific and extensive fire. The incident not only led to significant loss of life, but also left a lasting impact on the surrounding environment. This begs the question, what really happened at Westchapel? Prior to the disaster, the area had been experiencing a prolonged period of drought, which undoubtedly played a role in the sequence of events. On the morning of July 1975, farm owner Peter Bryan awoke to find his fields ablaze. Despite his best efforts, he was unable to contain the fire, which quickly spread across his property. Witnesses reported seeing several gas cylinders explode during the blaze. Concerned by the escalating situation, Bryan contacted the local fire station to request assistance. However, the response he received was far from what he had hoped for. Upon arrival, firefighters encountered a scene of total havoc. The fire was so intense that it posed a serious risk to human life. Tragically, 2 firefighters lost their lives while battling the inferno. As the fire continued to rage, it became evident that additional resources were needed. A total of 8 fire engines and 2 water tankers were eventually dispatched to the scene. However, the situation quickly spiraled out of control. Adding to the chaos, several propane cylinders exploded, causing the fire to spread even more rapidly. With the fire now out of control, the authorities made the difficult decision to abandon firefighting efforts and instead focus on evacuating nearby homes. The residents of Westchapel and the surrounding areas were left with little time to gather their belongings as they fled their homes. Many had to make the agonizing decision to leave loved ones behind, knowing that returning for them was too dangerous. The true extent of the tragedy only became apparent once the fire was extinguished. In total, 16 people lost their lives, including 4 children. The cause of the fire was never definitively determined, but it is believed to have been caused by a combination of factors, including the dry conditions and the use of flammable materials. Although the immediate crisis had passed, the aftermath of the disaster was far from over. The fire had caused extensive damage to the environment, leaving behind a trail of destruction that would take years to recover from. One of the most significant consequences of the disaster was the contamination of the surrounding area with hazardous materials. The fire had caused a large number of gas cylinders to explode, releasing toxic gases into the environment. This had a devastating impact on wildlife, with many animals dying as a result of the exposure. The soil and water in the area were also contaminated, making it unsafe for humans and animals alike. In the wake of the disaster, there was a massive effort to clean up the mess and restore the environment. This included removing the debris from the site of the fire, as well as treating the contaminated soil and water. However, the full impact of the contamination may never be known. In the aftermath of the disaster, there was a public inquiry to determine the cause and see how such a tragedy could have been avoided. One of the key findings of the inquiry was that the disaster could have been much worse had it not been for the actions of the firefighters and other emergency services. Despite being woefully underprepared, their bravery undoubtedly saved many lives. However, the inquiry also found that the emergency services were hampered by a lack of adequate training and equipment. At the time, there were no national standards for emergency response, which meant that each agency was operating in its own way. This led to confusion and delays as different agencies tried to coordinate their efforts. Additionally, the firefighters were not properly equipped to deal with a disaster of this magnitude. They lacked the necessary breathing masks and protective clothing, which put their lives at even greater risk. In the years since the disaster, much has been done to improve emergency response times and procedures. National guidelines have been established for dealing with major incidents, and training requirements for emergency services personnel have been increased. These measures have undoubtedly made the country more prepared for major disasters. The Westchapel disaster remains a haunting reminder of the importance of emergency preparedness. It is a testament to the bravery of those who responded to the disaster, but also a cautionary tale of what can happen when emergency services are not properly trained or equipped. As we remember the victims of this tragedy, we must also work to ensure that such a disaster never repeats itself. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with others. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to be notified of future uploads. Thanks for watching.